Hello and welcome to the Automotive Aftermarket History class. It's great to have you here. I thought today, in order for us to understand the automotive aftermarket history, we need to look way back to the turn of the century. In order to do that, we've got to look at the original equipment manufacturers because it's those cars that they produce that actually allow the automotive aftermarket to even exist. So in 1908, we're going to start with Henry Ford. He produces the first Model T. The significance of the Model T is that it puts the car in the common man's hands. He also then later came up with the mechanized assembly line. By 1927, there were 15 million Model Ts produced already, and he's not the only automotive manufacturer at the time. At the same time, many aftermarket manufacturers were founded, the likes of Raybestos, Champion, and many, many more. Early distribution channels were also developing at this time and taking shape. The one that comes to mind in 1925 is Napa. Automotive manufacturers at the time, the original equipment manufacturers that is, were focused on selling cars, not on parts and service of those vehicles. There's a tremendous amount of cars out there to be serviced, and the automotive aftermarket was there to do it. In the 1930s and the 1940s, the big three were focused on labor negotiations. During this time, the automotive manufacturers were distracted, and the automotive aftermarket continued to grow even more. Tremendous growth also caused some blurring of the lines on who was producing the parts. Due to the volumes involved, the original equipment manufacturers could not possibly supply all of the parts. Plus, there was innovation going on in the automotive aftermarket that the OEs wanted to take part in. But the parts clearly were marked automotive aftermarket manufacturers or with proper numbers for the OE. Distribution channels by this time were solidifying into three-step distribution. That included the manufacturer, the warehouse distributor, and the jobber. The jobber then delivered the parts to the person who was going to consume the parts. Also in the 1930s, Washington stepped in with the Robinson and Patman Act in 1936. It was designed to protect the traditional channel with pricing legislation against the new upstarts of the chain stores. It said that you had to price by function. At the same time, service stations were on 3 out of every 4 corners. Business was booming at this time because there were many parts components that needed to be replaced every 5,000 miles with parts like spark plugs, distributor caps, and the like. After the war, the American driveways were starting to have 2 cars. Cars were cool, and they were part of the Americana going on. The 60s brought more prosperity, but also some interesting changes. Chain stores were starting to evolve, and there were many more of them. More people were starting to work on their cars due to many forces. By the time the 70s came around, change was definitely in the air. The automotive aftermarket got a real boost from Washington with Magnuson-Moss, passed in 1975. Magnuson-Moss protected consumer warranty in that they didn't have to use original equipment parts to keep the warranty valid. DIY is becoming an even bigger part of the business as people start to feel the crunch from the gas prices that were creating long lines at the service stations. Additionally, at this time, the role of the service station starts to change dramatically. The 80s brought consistent growth in the aftermarket. Some interesting trends start to solidify. DIY really started to take off. To meet this demand, distribution saw an increase in DIY-focused locations. Two-step distribution started to gain in popularity. This was brought about from the improved inventory and logistics at the distributor level, along with pricing pressures being brought on by the chain locations. Service stations started to disappear and convert to convenience locations. Traditional distribution started to respond with programmed distribution groups during this time. The 90s and the early 2000s saw these trends continue. During this time, publicly traded chains gained popularity and today's footprint started to take shape. A big change that started was towards the end of the 90s, vehicle complexity and parts proliferation started to affect the aftermarket. Now, 20 years later, here we are. Publicly traded distribution accounts for about 40 to 50% of the storefronts. Program groups have started to consolidate due to improved technologies and internet-based transactions. The internet has brought total price transparency to the market. In 2013, voters in Massachusetts passed Right to Repair, which solidified the automotive aftermarket's ability to have information to service the cars properly. Here's what hasn't changed after all these years. There's still an abundance of vehicles to repair. The OE footprint can't possibly service them all. The OEs cannot provide the parts in 30 minutes like the automotive aftermarket can and has done for years. It's big business, $477 billion to be exact. 292 million vehicles on the road with an average age of 12.5 years. We drive those vehicles to the tune of 3 trillion miles a year. The automotive aftermarket specializes in change and always has. It'll be here for the next 100 years, keeping those parts available to keep those 292 million vehicles on the road today and into the future. Thanks for being with us.